How do you keep the creative juices
Oh,
flowing to keep creating work over the years?
greed is probably one of the reasons. No, actually, I'm doing what I enjoy doing. It's like other men like to play golf, so they play golf every chance they can. So you don't say to them, "How come you're playing golf today? You played last week." It was the same with me. To me, it is such fun creating characters, writing stories, even doing interviews, even though I can't hear most of what the guy says to me. But it's an exciting life, and when you do something that you know the fans seem to enjoy, that gives you such satisfaction you don't want to stop.
Is there something you do to overcome when you're stuck on something and the creative juices aren't flowing and you're saying, I have to come up with an idea? What's that thing you do?
Believe it or not, I almost never have been stuck on anything. Writing comes very easily to me. Everything else in the world is tough, but writing, I don't have any problem with that. I can't write fast enough to keep up with the things I want to say.
So you've been around for so
Forever.
long. Not forever. So what's the secret to a long life?
I have no idea. To me, it's still been a short life. I hope it goes on a lot longer. But I think being interested in what you're doing. I know my father, the poor guy, it was during the Depression, and he was out of work most of the time. So his life was shorter, and it was because there was nothing really that he was doing that could interest him. But I think if you do what really excites you, it just keeps you going as long as possible.
A lot of your life, a lot of in your work, you seem to have broken ground by bucking trends or going against the grain. Can you speak about that a little bit and tell me how important you think that is to being successful?
Well, I didn't consciously try to buck trends. What I tried to do was write the kind of stories I would want to read. And sometimes I had to buck a trend to do that. For example, I like dialogue. I feel the more you know, the more you hear what a person says, the more you get to know that person. So I like to put a lot of dialogue in my stories. Most writers don't do that. They write as little dialogue as possible because it takes a little longer to write the dialogue. And I wanted to play up minority races as much as possible too. I felt there isn't enough of that in comics or in the world. So I tried to do that. I tried to do an anti-drug story in fact, I did one with Spider-Man and almost got in trouble. It was a funny thing. It was an anti-drug story, but I mentioned drugs. And at that time, the Comic Book Association, which was a censorship group, they said, you can't use that story because you mentioned drugs. I said, but it's an anti-drug story. So life can be very complicated.
Is there one piece of advice you've found along the way about how to be successful in your work?
The only thing I can think of, and I hope this is right, I think whatever you do, you should do what you most want to do and what you're best at. Too many people don't really do what their heart's desire is, but they try to do something else because they think, well, it'll be easier to get a job or to make money. And if that happens, then when you're doing it, you feel like you're working. But if you do what you really want to do, you feel like you're playing. It's easier for you to do. I know I wanted to be a musician when I was young. I'd listen to the radio, I'd hear the big bands, and I'd say, damn, I'd like to be a band leader like Tommy Dorsey. But I had no talent for it. If I had wasted time trying to be a musician, I'd have either been a failure or I'd have been just an ordinary musician. But I love writing also, and it came easier to me. So I figured I'd stay with that. I think you have to do what you do best and what you enjoy, and then you have a better chance.
How were you able to, or what were your techniques you used along the years to make sure that you were so busy with the comics and you were working probably all the time. How did you balance work and life?
Well, it wasn't that hard. I had a very understanding wife, and she kept herself busy during the day while I was working. And I didn't work all, I would work. What happened was I had a full-time job at the office, and I worked in the office. When I started writing the stories and they started selling, I told my publisher I needed to stay home one day a week to get all my writing done. Later, I said, I got to stay home 2 days a week. Finally, I was staying home 3 days a week to write, and I went into the office 2 days a week to do my editing and art direction. But it was always in the daytime. I was free at night. Luckily, I was a fast writer. So by 5 or 6 o'clock, I was through writing the book. And then my wife and I would go out to dinner or to a movie or whatever. And it really was a good arrangement. There was no problem.
So you've been around for so long. You've done so much work. I'm sure you've made mistakes along the way. What was one of your biggest mistakes, and how do you deal with failure?
How I deal with failure? Nothing has really failed that much. I've been very lucky. As far as mistakes, I've made 1 million of them. I never tried, when I wrote these stories, I never thought to myself, gee, I ought to try to copyright something myself and own it. It always belonged to the company. So from a business point of view, that was a mistake. Although I don't think about that now. I'm still happy with what I do. But mostly, I've just enjoyed everything I've been doing, and I think my professional life has been a source of much pleasure for me.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're a good interviewer.
The scarecrow represents the farmers in the West. Most of these farmers had mortgages and owed money to the bankers in the East. When deflation hit, the value of the farmers' debts